Lee Carsley, the interim England manager, having named his squad for the next 2 games, the Nations League games against the Republic of Ireland on the 7th of September and against Finland on the 10th of September. Some new names in the squad, some people returning, including Jack Grealish and Harry Maguire, and also Morgan Gibbs-White has come into the squad as well from Forest. Let's bring in our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, who's joining us now. So, Rob, look, we heard a little bit there from Lee Carsley about his hopes to be England manager in the future, or whether or not he wants to be. Let's talk first of all about the squad and who's come back in some of the new faces.
Yes, for many, this will be the introduction to Lee Carsley. The fact he's announcing his first squad as England interim head coach, well, really not quite having had the profile in the past, despite the fact a year ago he did win the Euros under-21s trophy, the first time England's men had done that for 39 years. And 5 players who were part of that final victory over Spain last year are in this squad. So we do have Cole Palmer, who also went to the senior Euros with Gareth Southgate this summer, but 4 uncapped players, so from Newcastle, Livramento, Nottingham Forest's Gibbs-White. We also have the Lille midfielder Gomes and Chelsea's Madueke, who scored a hat-trick last weekend in their victory at Wolves. And players who missed out on Gareth Southgate's final tournament squad, Harry Maguire, the Manchester United defender, and indeed Jack Grealish from Manchester City, are both back in for these Nations League matches. Now, are these matches an audition? Well, Carsley's not really saying if he wants the job full-time. He's indicated that he sees himself even as a safe pair of hands as the search for Gareth Southgate's successor does continue, because the path that Gareth Southgate took to the job is one that Lee Carsley could follow as well, because Southgate himself was under-21s manager, initially brought in as interim manager in September 2016, who managed to convince his FA bosses that he was the right person to take the job full-time. Of course, Southgate had a very different profile at the time. He'd been part of England tournaments for many years, including, of course, famously Euro 96, and had been a notable player. Very different we're talking about with Lee Carsley. Yes, he was in the Premier League for many years with Everton, but his own managerial career has not been that notable at the senior level, very brief stints at Birmingham and Brentford, but he has been growing through the England setup, rising through the ranks at St George's Park, including leading the under-21s to that great final victory over Spain a year ago. So now we wait to see just how long he does remain in the job. This Nations League campaign is 6 matches long. It takes us through right the way through to November, with the matches against Ireland and Finland coming up in September, then Greece as well, awaiting the playing them home and away. And of course, facing Ireland, it's the country he did indeed play for 40 times, including at the 2002 World Cup. He is Birmingham born, so very much has roots in this country. We heard him being asked today about his family back in Ireland as well. But for England, they do have some time to make this appointment, because it's not until next March that we really see the start of the bigger, more serious business, perhaps, of trying to qualify for the 2026 World Cup. But Lee Carsley now has a very big platform to announce himself really to the entire English public, even the footballing public who might be less familiar with him, and perhaps to see if his FA bosses do consider the fact he might be the right person to take them forward in the long term.
Yeah, and Robbie did say he felt supported by those at the FA, saying he wants to do the best job he can, and also that he wants to see how the games go before he decides if he wants the job, which I think is probably quite sensible. But he did make the point that he knows the players, he understands the camp, and as you mentioned, Gareth Southgate had a similar trajectory as well. So for the FA, they've got, I guess, for them, really the best person they can right now in charge to sort of see if he can step up to the next stage.
Yes, and the FA did actually put an effective job advert out for this role a few weeks ago, which did talk about knowing the England setup, actually be able to cope with the pressure. So as much in the coming weeks, it will be about how does he handle even press conferences, talking to the media if various more challenging issues come up, to test himself, as we saw Gareth Southgate often had to take on more challenging topics in his 8 years as manager. So really, this is quite a moment for him. And for the whole England setup as well. Quite a lot of readjustment, and I do get a sense from around the FA they are feeling quite bruised by some of the criticism, particularly from former players and indeed some fans following the Euros. The fact is, although they missed out on a first men's trophy since 1966, it was a second consecutive final. Only Gareth Southgate, as an England men's manager, has taken England to a final since Alf Ramsey in '66. So they believe there should be some perspective. And, you know, even today, speaking here in Monaco to the UEFA president, Alexander Shefrin, in an interview you can see in full on the Sky News website, he says actually some of that sort of anger needs to dissipate from England fans in particular and to recognise the opportunities they've got. And if we're going to look even further ahead, the next Men's European Championships are in Britain and Ireland, with the final at Wembley in July of 2028. Could it be Lee Carsley in charge of the Three Lions then?